This is Radio 2 in tune with you on 433 and 330 meters medium wave and on stereo VHF. And with the time at 2 minutes past 8, we present the last of 4 programs that originally formed part of the Leading Ladies series, first broadcast on Radio 2 in 1977. Vanessa Lee introduces a leading lady who became one while still a teenager and who remains today as a star in her own right.
Though this might sound like a period piece, it's actually the story of a very modern leading lady. One of the great surprises in the British musical theatre in the 50s was a small nostalgic musical about the 20s. Actually, when it was launched, nostalgia was something of a novelty. Maybe now people are starting to get nostalgic about that nostalgic musical itself. They keep reviving it. So its original phenomenal run of 5.5 years is still pretty much an open-ended thing. It seems to be nostalgia itself that's gone a bit fusty. The show retains a strange freshness which is all its own. It was, and it is, Sandy Wilson's The Boyfriend.
We've got to have, for it's so dreary not to have that sad thing called the boyfriend. We scheme about and dream about, and we've been known to scream about that sad thing called the boyfriend. Life without him is quite impossible, and devoid of all charms. No amount of idle gossip will keep them out of our hearts. We're blue without, from blue without. Our dreams just won't come true without that certain thing called the boyfriend.
The Boyfriend wasn't so much a musical about the 20s themselves as about the delicious absurdities of the musicals of that period. It was No Nanette and Mr. Cinders, and very much itself. It was a perfect pastiche and a brilliant original. It was small in every sense, apart from its mammoth run. In the first instance, it was designed as an after-theatre entertainment at the Players' Theatre. It got expanded into a full-length show and transferred into Wyndham's Theatre with its original cast. It established a lot of things, a record run for one, and it established a very young British leading lady and launched her on a remarkable transatlantic career. The Boyfriend's heroine, Polly Brown, was played by a 19-year-old Anne Rogers.
And I wasn't cast for Polly in the first place. I was one of the other 3 girls. Mine was that oldest showbiz cliché of all, the understudy who goes on for the leading lady. And after that opening night, it seemed as though I just went on and on and on and on with the Boyfriend.
I don't claim that I am psychic, but one look at you and I kick away every scruple I learned as a pupil in school, my dear.
I'm not one to make predictions, but I've thrown off all restrictions and don't mind confessing I think it's a blessing that you are here.
Though I'm prepared to find I'm wrong, I've got a funny feeling we belong together. I could be so happy with you if you could be happy with me.
I'd be contented to live anywhere. What would I care? As long as you were there.
Skies may not always be blue, but one thing's as clear as can be.
I know that I could be happy with you, my darling, if you could be happy.
happy with me.
I could be happy with you if you could be happy with me. I'd be contented to live anywhere. What would I care? As long as you are there, skies may not always be blue. But one thing's as clear as can be. I know that I could be happy with you, my darling, if you could be happy with me.
I didn't actually intend to go on the stage. I was born in Liverpool and got out quick. During the war, I was evacuated to Cheshire, and I lived with Mr. and Mrs. Galley and their 3 sons. The Galleys brought me up, and I called her Auntie. And I was a very skinny child, all bones. I looked undernourished, underfed, under everything. And I wasn't. The Galleys were marvellous to me. They decided to send me to a dancing school in Cheshire, just to build me up. I turned out to be quite a good hoofer, actually. Tap dancing, musical comedy dancing, that sort of thing. And the school, of course, always had its annual concert. My second year there, I was the hit of the show, singing I'm Just Wild About Harry, complete with tap dance, aged 9. No, maybe I was only half a hit in the show. My Wild About Harry wasn't particularly good, really, but it had lots of energy. I had another number, slow and lethargic, leading the chorus in Alice Blue Gown, which didn't have the zip of Harry to divert people's attention from other things. My aunt heard one of the audience say, "Oh, yes, she's a nice little dancer, but oh, God, that voice." Well, I was packed off to singing lessons the following week. And by the time I was 12, I was singing operatic arias and other sort of recitative things and other bits from operas, famous operas. Actually, the nearest I've ever come to opera itself is singing Summertime from Porgy and Bess, which I do in my cabaret act these days.
Summertime, and the living is easy. Fish are jumping, and the cotton is high. Oh, your daddy's rich, and your ma is good looking. So hush, little baby, don't you cry.
But there in Cheshire, as a kid, those early singing lessons of mine had to be backed up with piano lessons to help with the singing, which was to help with the dancing in the first place. So then I had to have elocution lessons to help with everything else. And since there was nothing up north like RADA or Lambda or any theatrical schools, I had to go off to 4 different places, 4 different kinds of teachers for everything. I seemed never to be doing anything but study something or other. I'd never thought of going on the stage as a career, but then I don't suppose I'd even thought about what I was going to do with all this training I was enduring. People used to say, "Well, what are you going to do when you grow up, love?" And my aunt would say, "Oh, she's going on the stage." I didn't choose. I just took it for granted, I think. I was a sort of home bird, really, and I worried a bit about this going on the stage thing because it meant leaving my home. I knew the goal had to be London. You couldn't live in Cheshire and be in the theatre. So I thought, well, I'd better try it out first and see if I liked it. So I got a job for 5 weeks in the chorus of a panto, Cinderella. Well, it was just to see how I could cope with being away from home, really. I discovered I quite enjoyed the life.
My wonderful one, whenever I'm dreaming, to starlight a-gleaming, I see my
stint in the chorus of Cinderella, I never played anything but leading ladies. I must admit, the first one was a bit odd. Snow White. I thought it was going to be the Disney one with all those pretty tunes, you know, someday my prince will come and all that jazz. No, this was a version of the Brothers Grimm, modernized with more or less modern songs shoved in. I sang, Are the Stars Out Tonight? I Don't Know If It's Cloudy or Bright. And I toured for 2.5 years with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Except that we had 8. Well, you had to tour with one as an understudy, because if one of them had got sick, you just couldn't rush out in places like Preston or Rochdale and pick up a replacement dwarf. Well, we always travelled on Sundays by train, and it was ludicrous to see the looks on people's faces on stations like Crewe and Doncaster. I mean, they'd look at us and then do a terrible double take, and you could almost see them counting. 6, 7, 8... I think the ones who'd been out the night before and had a few drinks thought they were in pink elephant territory. Anyway, years later, at a very chic party, I met Annie Croft, the wife of David Croft, who writes Dad's Army, and she said, I saw you years ago on Crewe Station with 8 dwarfs. Well, that brought the general conversation to an immediate grinding halt. Anyway, we toured and toured with Snow White, playing virtually every theatre in the country just before they closed. Chelsea Palace, Chiswick Empire, Shepherd's Bush Empire. You know, I sometimes think that show helped to close them. Snow White eventually finished in London, and I read in The Stage, which is the theatrical newspaper, that James Sherville was looking for people to go into his new production of No, Nanette. So I wrote to him, and as I'm not very good at spelling anyway, I kept it down to the minimum, which was, Dear Mr. Sherville, my name's Anne Rogers, and I'd like to play Nanette. Well, I got a very charming letter back which said, Dear Miss Rogers, the role of Nanette is cast, but would you like to understudy? And we're holding auditions next Friday. Well, come that Friday, I had laryngitis. But I got myself up in my best coat and hat and gloves and the lot, and off I went to this audition. Well, there were people standing 4 deep on the stairs at the audition rooms. They were out into the street, waiting to be seen. Well, thinking I had some sort of special invitation, I said, excuse me, and passed them all to the head of the queue. I knocked on the door, and a voice said, Come in. And there was Mr. Sherville, his director, and a lot of other people sitting at a table. Well, they looked a bit startled at this muffled-up thing that I was, and I rasped, My name's Anne Rogers, and I've come to tell you I can't sing. They must have thought I was mad, but they said, That's very kind of you, thank you very much, dear. And home I went. Well, I didn't get into that revival of Nanette as anything, but years later I played Lucille at Drury Lane, and it's the only revival I've ever done.
Men are only grown-up boys, pretty ladies are their toys. Here today, tomorrow they're in search of other joys. It is nice to have a few all go loco over you. Still one ring to call your own is worth half a dozen on the phone. Oh, too many rings around. Rosie will never get Rosie a ring. Too many bows when she should have one. You know we'll never bring her ring around her finger. There may be safety in numbers when you are out on a fling. But when you think of home and hearth and that sort of stuff, me oh my, one good guy is more
was my non-audition for that earlier revival of Nanette that started everything for me. Because about 3 weeks later, a man named Reggie Palmer, who was Mr. Jimmy Sherville's assistant, rang me up and said, they're doing a new show at the Players, a 1920s sort of thing, it seems. Would you like to go and audition for a part in this? Well, a most extraordinary thing to happen, so I must have made some sort of impression on them, voice or no voice. Well, I certainly made an impression at the Players with my audition. In fishnet tights, a sweater, and tap shoes, I sang, in the middle of the stage, "Oh, My Beloved Father." Vida Hope, who was conducting the audition, said, "Have you got another number, dear?" So I sang and tap danced to "Oh, Johnny." Vida told me much later that they were having hysterics at the back of the theatre. They thought it was the funniest thing they'd ever seen. I was so loud, apparently. So I went into this 1920 sort of thing, which was called The Boyfriend, at the Players Theatre. It was intended to be only a 3 weeks run, and we rehearsed for 3 weeks. Vida said, well, I suppose we'd better have some understudies. Annie, you can hit a top C, so you'd better cover the part of Polly Brown, the leading lady. Sandy Wilson had written Polly for a great chum of his called Diana Maddox, who was taken very ill at the dress rehearsal. The ambulance was sent for, and I finished the dress rehearsal for her with the script in my hand. I took it home, stayed up most of the night, learnt it, and opened the next night as Polly Brown.
All we want is a room in Bloomsbury, just a room that will do for you and me. I'll sew the covers for 2 old cozy armchairs. Neighbors will love us for we shall laugh at all our cares.
While I'm reading a book,
I'll cook a stew. Then I'll bake a plum duff, enough for 2.
in our attic we'll be ecstatic as lovebirds upon a tree. All we want is a room in Bloomsbury.
No one can explain the incredible success of The Boyfriend, least of all me. Sandy Wilson probably put it best when he said it was the right show in the right place at the right time. And who can find the formula for that? Anyway, a lot of managements were interested in it at the Players, but they wanted to cast stars in it. It was the Players Theatre themselves who wanted all us unknowns to go with it when it transferred to the West End. And indeed, the only other person to have that sort of faith in it was Sir Bronson Albury, who presented it with us at Wyndham's. The fact that we weren't established personalities, if you like, the fact that there was a newness and a freshness to us, I think had a lot to do with the success of The Boyfriend. It was a company thing. We all worked well together, no stars, no temperaments. We were happy and we were a team.
Now perfect young ladies preparing to take our places among the noblesse. We're perfect young ladies preparing to make the most of the charms we possess. We're being finished and our family's wealth may be diminished, but at least we all have perfect health. And making the grade is our duty, you see. Oh, perfect young ladies are we. We're perfect young ladies who hope to attract a husband whose credit is good.
You may be young ladies, but why don't you act the way that a young lady should? I've often told you.
Please don't tell us again.
I ought to scold you.
But you know it would be quite in vain for being our ladies. Your duty, you see. Oh, perfect young ladies are.
Perfect young lady.
Perfect young ladies are we.
Ooh, I was very naive in those days. I wasn't remotely nervous of that opening night at Wyndham's. After we finished the dress rehearsal, I went for a walk round the West End. I remember bumping into a musician who said, "Hey, you're opening tonight. What the hell are you doing walking round in the rain?" "Oh, I'm just looking at the shops." When I think of the agonies of nerves I go through these days, yes, I suppose I was naive. Well, no one knew where to contact me after the opening night at Wyndham's. The press wanted to talk to me because the show had had rave reviews. And I got notices like, "I knew Gertrude Lawrence, I knew this, I knew that." But I'd never seen Gertie Lawrence. I'd never even heard her. So I'd no idea what they were comparing me with. In those days, you see, you had a run-of-the-play contract, which meant just that. For as long as the play ran, you played. Well, at that time, nothing had ever run as long as The Boyfriend. It made my career. It practically killed it as well. I was in it for 3.5 years, and they were vital years, I think. Because when you're young and have just come into the business, you need all the experience you can get. Different roles, different characters. I think you even need a flop or two. Because a flop in its way can do wonders to your approach to other things. I didn't get any variety of experience. I spent my first 6 years in 2 shows, Snow White and The Boyfriend. And then came Eliza in My Fair Lady. I could have danced all night and still have begged for more. I could have spread my wings and done 1,000 things I've never done before. I'll never know what made it so exciting. Why all at once my heart took flight. I only know when he began to dance with me, I could have danced. The American management that presented Boyfriend on Broadway had wanted me to go over and do it, but the British management wouldn't release me. So they auditioned more than 250 girls and found one named Julie Andrews to play Polly. She was contracted for a year on Broadway, and then she was offered My Fair Lady. So, naturally enough, when Lerner and Lowe, who'd written My Fair Lady, came to London to find someone to go out on a national tour of America, they thought they'd take a look at this girl who was playing the part they'd first seen Julie in. I went cap in hand to Sir Bronson Albury and asked to be released. Fortunately, some 6 months before, he'd written an article for one of the national dailies in which he'd said that management should never hold back young performers. They should be given the chance to gain all the experience they could. Well, I didn't quote this at him. I didn't need to. He thought it a good thing that I should go, and he released me. And there went another 5 years of my life playing Eliza Doolittle.
All I want is a room somewhere far away from the cold night air, with one enormous chair. Wouldn't it be lovely? Lots of chocolate for me to eat, lots of coal making lots of it, warm face, warm hands, warm feet. Wouldn't it be lovely? How so lovely, sitting absolutely still.
chair.
Wouldn't it be lovely? Lots of chocolate for me to eat. Lots of coal, make lots of eat. Warm face, warm hands, warm feet. Wouldn't it be lovely? Oh, so lovely, sitting apps are blooming lovely still. I would never budge till spring crept down the windowsill.
Someone's there rested on my knee. Warm and tender she can be. Who takes good care of me?
Wouldn't it be lovely?
I was still very young, and I approached Eliza without too much fear. I wanted so much to play her. I didn't particularly want to leave England, as I'd just got married, but we decided it would be good for my career. And it was. In Chicago, I won the Sarah Siddons Award as Actress of the Year, the first British performer to win it. By the time I finished with Fair Lady at Drury Lane, I'd spent a total of 11 years playing 3 roles. That's a lot out of a very young life. By the time I came to Drury Lane, I'd had 2 years of playing Eliza behind me, which was comforting. The size of Drury Lane didn't worry me, because in America we'd played the biggest auditoriums wherever we went. Opera houses, stadiums. I think if the local jail had held more people, they'd have turfed the prisoners out to put us in. You remember all that hoo-ha when the Bolshoi ballet arrived in Britain and people camped out for nights to get tickets? Well, the same thing happened with us in San Francisco. The opera house there held 3,500 people, and when the tickets went on sale, within about 6 hours they had something like $1 million at the box office. The American tour was very exciting, but it was still most exciting to play it here in London, and Eliza's a great role to play, both vocally and dramatically.
Words, 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 I'm so sick of words. I get words all day through, first from him, now from you. Is that all you blighters can do? Don't talk of stars burning above. If you're in love, show me. Tell me no dreams filled with desire. If you're on fire, show me. Here we are together in the middle of the night. Don't talk of spring, just hold me tight. Anyone who's ever been in love will tell you that this is no time for a chat. Haven't your lips longed for my touch? Don't say how much. Show me, show me. Don't talk of love lasting through time. Make me know I'm dying hard. Show me now. Sing me no song, read me no rhyme. Don't waste my time. Show me. Don't talk of June, don't talk of fall. Don't talk at all. Show me. Never do I ever want to hear another word. There isn't one I haven't heard. Here we are together in what ought to be a dream. Say one more word and I'll scream. Haven't your arms hungered for mine? Please don't explain. Show me, show me. Don't wait until wrinkles and lines pop out all over my brow. Show me.
3 years after I opened here in Fair Lady, I went back to America and into a musical version of The Prisoner of Zenda with Alfred Drake and Chita Rivera. Well, it was 95% right, but we just couldn't find that other 5% to make it a hit. And Alfred Drake, who's the great perfectionist, wouldn't open on Broadway in something that wasn't perfect. Well, anyway, all that exists of Zenda is a beautiful record sleeve for an LP that was never made. I came back into the West End with a pet of a show of Harold Prince's called She Loves Me. It never made money, so it couldn't run. It was a very, very costly production, and though we were playing to 94% capacity business at the Lyric Theatre, we just couldn't get out financially. Well, by now, I seem to have started a shuttle service between here and America. The management for whom I'd done Fair Lady and Zenda wanted me to go out on a big West Coast tour with half a sixpence, which was a tremendous hit on Broadway with Tommy Steele and Polly James. Well, they wanted me for the Polly James role. Most people seem to dislike taking over, playing a role someone else has already done. It doesn't apply so much in the straight theatre, and certainly it can't in the classics. For instance, think of Olivier's Hamlet, say. If no one else had a bash at the role, you'd never get any comparisons. If it was Shakespeare or Oscar Wilde, everybody would be mad keen to have a go. So many Macbeths, so many Lady Bracknells. No, I believe in getting in there and doing it and giving it your own interpretation. There should be exchangeable ideas on the Eliza Doolittles or the Maria von Trapps you've seen in the musical theatre.
Raindrops on roses and whiskers on kittens, bright copper kettles and warm woolen mittens, brown paper packages tied up with strings. These are a few of my favorite things. Cream-colored ponies and crisp apple strudels, doorbells and sleigh bells and schnitzel with noodles, wild geese that fly with the moon on their wings. These are a few of my favorite things. Girls in white dresses with blue satin sashes, snowflakes that stay on my nose and eyelashes, silver white winters that melt into springs. These are a few of my favorite things. When the dog bites, when the bee stings, when I'm feeling sad, I simply remember my favorite things, and then I don't feel so bad.
This business of doing national tours of musicals in America is something about which I feel quite strongly. The cities in America, of course, are further apart than in this country, obviously. But I mean, here, if you don't get to play a role in a musical in the West End, you don't get a chance of ever doing it again. In the States, they have what they call summer stock. And if something's a success on Broadway, then the following year they send out a production tour all over the States. And people at least get a chance to play something they missed out on Broadway. Recently, I did Camelot in America, which plays like a dream, and audiences love it. It was presented by the Los Angeles Civic Light Opera, a non-profit-making, subsidized organization, which could afford to put it on. I mean, playing a queen in Camelot, of course, you've got to be magnificently dressed. I mean, you can't have a bit of nylon taffeta. I mean, that just won't do. But there are lots of non-profit-making organizations in America, and they do beautiful productions. Now, here in this country, we've got the Royal Shakespeare Company, the Covent Garden Opera Company, Royal Ballet, the National Theatre, all subsidized, but nothing, not a thing for the musical theatre. Now, I don't know how one would go about creating a national theatre for the musical. You see, it's a highly specialized medium, and I do hate people who put on musicals with straight actors who can't sing. They all think that because Rex Harrison spoke to music that they can do every other musical that way. Well, it's not so. You can't say to someone, we're doing a big musical in 3 months. Go and have some singing lessons and we'll give you the lead. It's not possible. It just doesn't work. And yet, only a concept like, well, the National Theatre can cope with the costs of a musical in these days. Those big, marvellous, and I think essential ones, like The Cowards, and certainly the novellos, like The Dancing Years, which is a superb score and really needs singing.
When night is dark and deep, and shepherds count their sheep, you hear in the silver silence the whispering wings of sleep.
did a musical called I Do with Ian Carmichael in 1968. And we were the entire cast.
There's a strange new world that you enter when you say, I do.
I do.
Such a strange new world that you barely can believe it's true.
It's true.
For your friends all shower you with shoes and rice.
Your head is spinning and you feel so nice. Who thinks that marriage is a paradise? I do. I do.
It's a strange new world that you enter when you say, I do.
I do. You can almost see that the future's going to be a dream.
Come true.
You can throw away your every care and doubt, for that's what married life is all about. I do. I do. I do.
Strange new world that you enter when you say,
I do.
I do.
I do.
I do.
You can almost see that the future's going to be a dream. Come true. You can throw away your every care and doubt,
for that's what married life is all about.
I do.
I do.
I do.
I do.
I do.
I do.
I do. I do. I do. I do.
I'm afraid I Do wasn't a major success. I always call it didn't. Expense again, you see. Everyone thought, here's a two-handed musical, cheap little show to do. Not true. We had a revolving stage, an 18-piece orchestra, and exactly the same size staff we had for She Loves Me. The only thing we didn't have was the chorus. I think the show itself was a little too sickly for English people's tastes, perhaps. But it was a super show, and certainly one of the best directed shows I've ever done. I've always said that there should have been 3 names above the title: Ian Carmichael, Anne Rogers, and Gower Champion. But the score wasn't strong enough. In fact, there was only one song that came out of it.
Sometimes in the morning, when shadows are deep, I lie here beside you, just watching you sleep. And sometimes I whisper what I'm thinking of. My cup runneth over with love.
Sometimes in the evening, when you do not see, I study the small things you do constantly, and memorize moments that I'm fondest of. My cup runneth over with love.
Well, Ian and I got fantastic notices when the show opened, but the property itself just got slated. It had been the play The Four Poster. We played a married couple who aged from 25 to 65 on stage, which was very different to anything else I'd ever done before. They were 2 marvellous roles to play. And I had one big number when the woman, Agnes, in middle age, is rejected by her husband and lashes out into a song.
Oh, that pompous, 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 pompous ass! Now's the time for that hat. The one I've been saving all these years. What's good for the goose is good for the gander! A
25 guinea hat. What do you think of that? 13 feathers of the pigeon family and a bird of paradise plume. I've hid this hat for 4 whole years in this great big box at the foot of the bed, right here in this very same room. But now my spouse, it's out of the box, and I'm going to tell you what. If I am going to go to pot, this pot is gonna be hot. Hey, who's that racy middle-aged lady peeking underneath her veil? Why don't you know that's flaming Agnes? Her husband up and left her. Who's that pale, available matron underneath the peacock's tail? Why can't you guess? That's flaming Agnes. Used to find her sitting in the kitchen. Mousy housewife was her name. But the day her husband up and left her, Agnes started to flame. Now they say there's nothing can save her, and they blame her husband for the blazing shame of flaming Agnes. Auditioned for No Nanette in America and was offered an 18-month contract. I said no, I didn't want to stay in the States. Not at that time. I was just there on holiday. Anyway, I finished my holiday and I came home and made a few more records. About 6 months later, I got a phone call from Tennant's who'd just got the rights to Nanette, and they offered me the role of Lucille. Meanwhile, my agent came back to me and said they wanted me to play it in Chicago first. Well, this wasn't so much an offer as something I couldn't refuse. Virtually, if I didn't play it in Chicago, I couldn't play it at Drury Lane. So I said, all right, provided I had a get-out clause, and I played it in Chicago for no longer than 3 months before opening in the same production here. Nanette, looking back on it, was my first revival. Lovely musical, and much the same sort of structure as Boyfriend. Actually, in that the workload is evenly distributed. There's no leading lady as such. The roles of Nanette, Sue, the part Dame Anne and Eagle plays, and Lucille, my role, are of equal importance. And Lucille has some marvellous numbers, especially You Can Dance With Any Girl at All, which had a fabulous dance routine. But, whew, was I puffed after it. I used to collapse in the wings, and my friend Thora Hurd used to fan me till I got my breath back. Thanks, Thor. A little freedom now and then is apt to make the best of men a little better even when he leads a model life.
I quite agree that liberty, permitted in the right degree, produces sweeter harmony between a man and wife. But your words sound very strange.
The world has seen a change. Oh, you can dance with any girl at all. So just forget me and act as though you never met me. I will be a flower on the wall while you are dancing fancy free. Show the ladies every step you know. Just raise Hades till they tingle, mingle till they think you're single. You can dance with any girl at all as long as you come home with me.
Am I to really understand? I'll not receive a reprimand if you should find yourself abandoned for some other dear.
As long as I am there to see how gracefully you 1, 2, 3 and entertain your company, then you need never fear.
But suppose the hour grows late.
With pleasure I shall wait.
You mean I can dance with any girl at all?
That's right. Just forget me.
Oh, really?
And act as though you never met me.
You will be a flower on the wall while I am dancing fancy free. I'll show those ladies every step I know. Just raise Hades till they tinkle, mingle till they think I'm single. I can dance with any girl at all
As long as
I come home.
you'd better come home.
Yes, I come home with you.
During the run of Nanette, I branched out quite a bit. I went into cabaret with a solo act, playing places like the Dorchester, the Mayfair, and the Savoy Hotel. I have got a minute, just a little minute. I have only got a minute, just a minute. I have only got a minute. That is all the time I have to sing this tiny little minute waltz. It isn't easy, but I'll try, and then I have to say goodbye. But first I'll take a minute and put in it every note that Chopin wrote, and thus I'll sing the little minute waltz and hope that I can sing with no faults. And though it's difficult, I'll give it every last breath that I have within my body. Hope that my performance won't be very shoddy. Singing every note will not do wonders for my throat. I probably will end up hoarse. Of course I will have done it on a wager that I made. I will have won. It's not the money, but satisfaction that I get from winning money on this silly kind of bet. Though this kind of solo wasn't his intention, Chopin isn't here to make an intervention. So with your permission and no intermission, I will sing each note that composer wrote. As you can hear, my trilling isn't very thrilling, but no one can say I wasn't very willing to attempt a thing that's not been done, and just for fun to sing the minute waltz. As I sing, the seconds fly, oh, too soon the minute waltzes by, and now I ask you, where am I? Halfway through the tune, and I'm falling far behind. I have less than 30 seconds, less than 30 seconds, less than 30, less than half a minute. I have less than 30 seconds, I have less than half a minute to complete this little minute waltz. And every note that's in the score, while the sands of time I know are pouring, let me win my bet, and I'll run with the money down to some big store, and then I'll buy a honey of a trophy for myself to put upon the shelf to show the world I've won. Oh, the second hand is rushing round the dial, and though I'd like to end this torture with a smile, unless someone knows how to stop the clock, you're gonna see me cry before I've said goodbye. 8 little measures to complete the song, but I'm afraid my little lungs will burst before too long. If only I can last the scale, I won't have failed to sing the little minute waltz. And while I was still in Nanette, I received the strangest offer I'd ever had. I was offered the role of Blanche Dubois in A Streetcar Named Desire, to be done in South Africa. Marvellous, marvellous offer. But I thought, how odd. Nanette Streetcar? I thought this casting lady most strange, because that was a thought process that I couldn't follow or fathom. Until I went to Wig Creations and Stanley Hall, who'd made Vivian Lee's wigs for the original production. He brought out a period Plays and Players, which is a theatrical magazine, with a centre spread of the original Streetcar cast, and there was Vivian Lee, and every pose she was in was pure 1920s. Playing Streetcar was the highlight of my career, I think. In Cape Town, we played to mixed audiences, but in Johannesburg, we'd play one night to a white audience and a black audience the next one. I must say, it was received very differently. The black audiences thought it hysterically funny and laughed all the way through. That was a bit shattering, but we got used to it. Because of the decline of the musical theatre, the sort I was used to doing anyway, I've gone over to straight plays. And the first straight role I ever did was on American television with Charlton Heston, called Elizabeth the Queen. He played Essex, Dame Judith Anderson played the Queen, I played the thing they call the love interest. I enjoyed that. Then I did a comedy called A Shot in the Dark in Chicago and was nominated for another Sarah Siddons Award. And then Streetcar. And, of course, Noel Coward's Quadrille with Margaret Lockwood and Richard Todd and John Stone. But like every other musical performer, I suppose, the thing I miss most is the sound of the orchestra tuning up and that little moment of quiet when the conductor raises his baton. The musicians are silent and the audience stops talking. Then comes the conductor's upbeat and you're into the overture. That's exciting, and that I do miss.
Anne Rogers was presenting her own story of life in the British musical theatre. The programme was researched and devised by Frank Salter, introduced by Vanessa Lee, and produced by Barry Knight. The programme was first broadcast in 1977. Well, we've got about a minute in hand now, so time to give you an update on the motoring information affecting drivers this evening. In Kent, where there was a multiple accident on the M2 earlier this evening, we are told that limited access has now been obtained in both directions over the Medway Bridge, just south of Junction 2 to Rochester, but traffic is still slow moving.